Admitted. The Strange Tale of Depsey the Rabbit. Chapter 28. Dr. Dinglegreen's Drawing Room. In the basement hideout, Depsey cleared his throat. The sound cut through the tension like a blade. "Chuck, Lucy, I need to..." Everything went white. Not the gentle white of cartoon sunshine or the harsh white of stage lights, but the invasive white of broadcasting transmission. Cold, clinical, penetrating. Chuck felt his consciousness pulled sideways, as if someone had grabbed his thoughts and yanked them through dimensional static. Voices drifted through the white void, distorted and dreamy. Subjects secured. Full spectrum analysis confirms. Psychological profiles indicate maximum entertainment potential. And then, cutting through the ethereal chatter like a rusty scalpel, came Dr. Dinglegreen's unmistakable rasp. "Take them to my abode. I have a most interesting idea." The white faded to black. Chuck's consciousness returned slowly, like surfacing from deep water. The first thing he noticed was the smell. Not the familiar cartoon sense of ink and painted backdrops, but something medicinal and ancient. Formaldehyde mixed with old leather, surgical steel, and underneath it all, the metallic tang of centuries-old blood. He found himself seated in an overstuffed chair that seemed to embrace him with unwelcome familiarity. Lucy sat to his right, her porcelain surface reflecting the warm glow of a fireplace that shouldn't have been able to cast shadows in so many wrong directions. Depsey occupied the chair across from them, his yellow shoes planted firmly on an oriental rug that depicted scenes of surgical procedures in exquisite detail. The drawing room surrounded them with false hospitality. Rich mahogany paneling lined the walls, interrupted by oil paintings in gilt frames. Portraits of cartoon performers from across the decades, all bearing the same subtle wrongness around the eyes that marked Dr. Dinglegreen's work. A grandfather clock ticked in the corner, its pendulum swinging to a rhythm that felt medical rather than temporal. Classical music drifted from hidden speakers, something that might have been Mozart if Mozart had composed while watching surgery. The melody wove through the air like surgical thread, beautiful and sharp, and designed to cut. Specimens, came that familiar rasp. Dr. Dinglegreen entered with the fluid grace of something that had been perfecting its human mimicry for centuries. His tall posture seemed even more unnatural in formal surroundings, like a praying mantis wearing a lab coat over evening attire. But his attention wasn't distributed evenly among his captives. His eyes fixed on Depsey with an intensity that made Chuck's cartoon physics crawl. The doctor's gaze moved over Depsey's form like a butcher evaluating prime cuts, calculating, possessive, deeply inappropriate. His needle-sharp teeth were barely visible behind lips that had curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Fascinating bone structure," Dr. Dinglegreen murmured, his voice carrying the tone of someone discussing livestock. 20 years of blood money enhancement, rift exposure, dimensional modification, and yet the underlying architecture remains so pristine. Chuck and Lucy might as well have been furniture for all the attention the doctor paid them. His focus remained locked on Depsey, with an intensity that felt actively threatening. "The yellow shoes are particularly inspired," the doctor continued, circling Depsey's chair like a predator. "Classic cartoon proportions, but with that subtle wrongness that blood money addiction creates. The way the leather has absorbed cosmic taint over decades of elimination work. Exquisite." Depsey pressed himself deeper into the chair. "What do you want?" "Want?" Dr. Dinglegreen paused his circling, tilting his head at an angle that suggested his neck had too many vertebrae. "I want to understand how 20 years of systematic murder has modified your cartoon physiology. I want to catalogue the enhancement patterns blood money creates in rabbit anatomy. I want to dissect the intersection of guilt and cosmic corruption in living tissue. Chuck found his voice. You're talking about him like he's meat, Dr. Dinglegreen finished, finally acknowledging Chuck's existence with obvious irritation. Yes, that's precisely what he is, what you all are. Cartoon flesh shaped by artificial personality constructs, ready for modification, improvement, or disposal as circumstances require. The doctor's attention snapped to Chuck and Lucy with sudden, violent focus. Though I confess, these two present significantly less interesting possibilities. Lucy's porcelain surface reflected the firelight in trembling patterns. What do you mean? I mean, Dr. Dinglegreen said, his voice carrying the flat tone of someone stating obvious facts, that you represent inferior specimens, overexposed to truth through ink addiction, contaminated by psychological conditioning devices, damaged by amateur investigation techniques. He gestured dismissively at Chuck. This one has destroyed his natural cartoon optimism through compulsive truth-seeking. The enhancement potential is minimal. Structural integrity compromised by dimensional vision exposure. His clinical gaze moved to Lucy. And this one has been corrupted by self-criticism amplification technology. Psychological framework unstable. Poor candidate for systematic modification. The casual dismissal in his voice was more terrifying than any threat. Dr. Dinglegreen spoke about their deaths with the same tone someone might use to discuss discarding spoiled food. However, the doctor continued, returning his attention to Depsey with renewed fascination. This specimen represents 2 decades of perfect blood money conditioning, enhanced by systematic murder, strengthened by cosmic guilt, refined by dimensional exposure. Absolutely fascinating research potential. Dr. Dinglegreen moved to a display case that hadn't been visible before, his movements suggesting someone selecting tools for delicate work. Behind the glass lay medical instruments that seemed to shift between familiar surgical tools and devices that hurt to look at directly. 200 years of refinement, he said, selecting a scalpel that reflected light in ways that suggested it cut through more than flesh. Do you have any conception of what that represents in terms of specimen collection? He traced the blade through the air above Depsey, never quite touching, but close enough to suggest possibilities. My medical license was issued in 1823. The same year I acquired my first rabbit specimen. The similarities to your bone structure were remarkable, though the enhancement potential was primitive by current standards. Depsey's voice came out strangled. What happened to him? Preserved, Dr. Dinglegreen replied with obvious satisfaction. Every modification catalogued, every enhancement recorded, every degradation documented. Invaluable data for subsequent rabbit acquisitions. He moved to another display case, this one containing what looked like anatomical drawings, but with diagrams that made Chuck's scientific mind recoil. The sketches showed cartoon rabbits with various modifications, additional limbs, rerouted nervous systems, enhancement points glowing with unnatural light. Rabbit physiology responds particularly well to cosmic modification, the doctor continued, his clinical fascination growing more intense. The natural guilt capacity, the social bonding mechanisms, the way cartoon innocence intersects with moral corruption. Absolutely exquisite research material. Chuck felt sick. You're talking about torture. Dr. Dinglegreen's attention snapped to him with obvious annoyance. I'm discussing scientific advancement, though I suppose inferior specimens wouldn't appreciate the distinction. He returned to his catalogue of rabbit modifications, speaking directly to Depsey as if Chuck and Lucy had ceased to exist. The blood money enhancement in your case represents unprecedented perfection. 20 years of systematic conditioning, each murder refining the cosmic corruption integration. Your guilt has been weaponized, Your friendship capacity has been preserved despite systematic betrayal. Your moral framework has been modified to accommodate elimination work while maintaining functional social bonds. The doctor's voice carried genuine admiration. You're not just a specimen. You're a masterpiece of enhancement engineering. Depsey pressed himself further into the chair. I never chose this. Choice. Dr. Dinglegreen seemed genuinely puzzled by the concept. Specimens don't choose. They're selected, acquired, modified, and preserved. Choice is a luxury reserved for collectors, not collections. He moved closer to Depsey, his elongated form looming over the chair. Though I confess, your resistance patterns are particularly intriguing. Most blood money subjects lose their original personality structure within 5 years, yet you've maintained functional friendship capacity despite 43 elimination assignments. Fascinating. Chuck tried to intervene. Leave him alone. Quiet, Dr. Dinglegreen snapped without looking away from Depsey. Inferior specimens don't interrupt when superior examples are being discussed. The casual dismissal carried a threat that made Chuck's cartoon physics destabilize slightly. Dr. Dinglegreen spoke to them the way someone might address talking furniture, irritating, but ultimately inconsequential. The dimensional exposure has added layers of complexity, the doctor continued, his clinical fascination reaching fever pitch. Rift survival has enhanced your reality navigation capabilities while preserving the guilt-based moral modifications. You've become something unprecedented, a dimensionally aware cartoon character with intact friendship capacity and systematic murder experience. His needle teeth glinted as he leaned closer. I could spend decades cataloging your modification patterns. Dr. Dinglegreen straightened with the decisive air of someone who had made a professional decision. Which brings us to resource allocation. He moved to a medical cabinet Chuck hadn't noticed before, selecting instruments with the casual efficiency of someone preparing for routine work. Maintaining 3 specimens requires significant facility resources. Laboratory space, enhancement materials, monitoring equipment. Chuck felt reality beginning to blur around the edges. What are you saying? I'm saying, Dr. Dinglegreen replied without looking up from his instrument selection, that cost-benefit analysis suggests focusing resources on the superior specimen while disposing of the inferior examples. Lucy's porcelain surface had gone completely white. Disposing. Standard procedure for damaged or contaminated specimens, the doctor explained in the same tone someone might use to discuss taking out trash. The yellow one has destroyed his research potential through ink addiction. The porcelain one has been compromised by psychological conditioning exposure. Neither represents significant scientific value. He selected a device that looked like a syringe crossed with a tuning fork, its surface reflecting light in ways that hurt to observe directly. Enhancement fluid causes rapid personality dissolution in damaged specimens, quite efficient for disposal purposes. Depsey lurched forward in his chair. No, they're my friends. Dr. Dinglegreen paused his preparation to regard Depsey with mild interest. Friends? Specimens don't have friends. They have research relationships, enhancement connections, modification partnerships. Friendship is a luxury for entities that aren't part of collections. You can't just kill them, Depsey insisted, his voice carrying desperation that seemed to fascinate the doctor. Can't? Dr. Dinglegreen tilted his head at that impossible angle again. I've been disposing of inferior specimens for 2 centuries. It's routine maintenance, not moral complexity. He returned to his instrument preparation with renewed focus. Though your attachment response is noteworthy, most blood money subjects lose social bonding capacity within the first decade of elimination work. Your preservation of friendship mechanisms, despite systematic murder, represents unprecedented conditioning success. Chuck found himself backing toward the wall despite being seated. "You're insane." "I'm efficient," Dr. Dinglegreen corrected, approaching with the enhancement syringe. "Inferior specimens consume resources better allocated to superior examples. This is basic laboratory management." Lucy's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Depsey." "Please," Depsey said, his cartoon physics destabilizing with emotional stress. "I'll do whatever you want, just don't hurt them." Dr. Dinglegreen paused again, this time with obvious scientific fascination. "Interesting. Even under extreme stress, you maintain protective instincts toward inferior specimens. The blood money conditioning has preserved your social bonding mechanisms while enabling systematic murder. Absolutely remarkable." He approached Chuck with clinical determination. "Let's test the durability of those mechanisms." Dr. Dinglegreen moved toward Chuck with the predatory grace of someone who had performed this procedure countless times before. The enhancement syringe caught the firelight in ways that suggested it contained something that moved independently of physics. "The dissolution process is quite rapid," he explained conversationally, as if discussing weather. "Personality structure breaks down within minutes. Consciousness persists long enough to observe the modification process, which provides valuable data about cartoon identity degradation patterns." Chuck pressed himself against the chair's back, but cartoon physics offered no escape from the approaching needle. "This is murder." "This is resource management," Dr. Dinglegreen corrected, raising the syringe to examine its contents. "Though I suppose the distinction might seem academic from your perspective." Depsey struggled against his chair, but something in the upholstery seemed designed to restrain cartoon characters. "Stop. I'll tell you anything you want to know." "Oh, you'll tell me everything regardless," the doctor assured him without pausing his approach toward Chuck. "But research requires multiple data points. Observing your psychological response to specimen loss will provide valuable insights into blood money conditioning durability." The syringe was inches from Chuck's cartoon physiology when the doctor paused, as if struck by a sudden thought. Though perhaps the porcelain specimen first. Ceramic degradation patterns under enhancement fluid might provide more interesting visual documentation. He turned toward Lucy with the same clinical interest, and Chuck realized with horror that his brief reprieve meant watching his friend die first. "The fragmentation should be quite spectacular," Dr. Dinglegreen mused, adjusting his approach vector. "Porcelain typically develops stress fractures before complete structural failure. Fascinating intersection of material science and consciousness dissolution." Lucy had gone completely rigid, her reflection showing terror that cartoon characters weren't designed to experience. "Please." "Pleading is common in the final moments," the doctor noted with academic detachment, "though rarely effective. Enhancement fluid doesn't respond to emotional appeals." Depsey's voice rose to something approaching panic. "I'll cooperate. Complete cooperation. Just don't—" "Your cooperation was never in question," Dr. Dinglegreen interrupted, positioning the syringe against Lucy's porcelain surface. "Superior specimens don't choose whether to provide research data. They simply provide it." The needle touched Lucy's arm, and Chuck could see enhancement fluid beginning to flow through transparent tubing. Lucy's porcelain began to develop hairline cracks that spread with unnatural speed. "Fascinating," Dr. Dinglegreen murmured, watching the degradation pattern with obvious scientific interest. "The fracture propagation follows theoretical models precisely." The drawing room's temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant. The fireplace flames flickered and dimmed, shadows deepening into something that felt actively hostile. Even Dr. Dinglegreen's clinical focus wavered as reality itself seemed to shiver. "Doctor?" The voice carried harmonics that suggested its owner existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Dinglegreen straightened with obvious surprise, the enhancement syringe pausing its deadly work.